Hey, would you pass some of these out to anybody doesn't have one?
How you doing? Good to see you. Fine.
How you doing, man? I'm Roger Cook. I'm running for Congress, and I sure appreciate you voting for me.
1972 was an election year in America, and candidates in 435 congressional districts throughout the United States sought again the mandate of the people.
We need to vote for somebody who's going to help us.
Don't forget to vote for me, okay? All right, a lot.
But in one district that year, the mandate sought had a larger meaning. This man, the great-grandson of a freed slave, campaigned for a seat in the United States Congress, not in Chicago or New York, but in the commercial capital of the Deep South, Atlanta, Georgia. Though not the first of his race to enter the United States Congress, in 1972, Andrew Young became the first black man in 100 years to be elected to Washington from the Deep South. And if some called his presence here a beginning, it was one that had not been quick to come. For one of his predecessors in this office had signed the Georgia Act of Secession. 3 others had fought with Robert E. Lee. Many more had owned slaves. There were those who felt the Civil War had changed nothing. But what force had failed to accomplish a century before had been achieved now in another way.
I think when we started out in the movement, we thought, first of all, that we would have the country changed within 5 years. But it didn't take us 6 months to realize that that wasn't true. And then we probably all figured that somewhere along the line, we'd be killed within 5 years for trying. And it got to the place where we joke about it. I can remember when Dr. King was going over to Birmingham, when we made the decision to go, the next thing was, well, now, when you go into Bull Connor's territory starting to talk about freedom and integration and voting rights, say somebody's not going to come out of there alive. And we sort of went around the room jokingly, or he did, saying what kind of eulogy he would preach for each of us if it was one of us, you know. And you know, how he'd make it sound real good. He'd fix us up, and if it was him, because he never talked about it being him. He always talked about it being one of us. But I think in the back of our minds, we really knew he was talking about himself.
After the death of their leader, some would continue his march, while for others, the decision was to move in another way.
I started running because the South and the nation was getting pretty polarized. I felt like that was running counter to everything that I had known about this country for all of my lifetime, and that basically there was a reservoir of goodwill that would respond to somebody that called on people to live and work together. And I was really trying to prove something. I was trying to prove that even in the Deep South, there were enough whites who had moved beyond the traditional racism to team up with a black minority to create a rather liberal majority. And I figured if I could do that coming out of a civil rights, peace, labor background, none of which was particularly compatible with Atlanta, it would say that it's sort of possible anywhere.
His announcement in April was not his first. In 1970, he had run for the same seat. and lost by 20,000 votes. And some who remembered that campaign questioned whether a black man could ever be sent to Washington from the South.
Well, look, we'll call back and let folk know that you need a little more help. But I think you all are doing all right out here. Okay? And don't get discouraged.
Well, we need one more canvasser over here. Okay, let's go, Hardy.
His volunteers were, for the most part, new to politics. As they organized in the spring of that year, their work looked not to November, but to August, and the Democratic primary on the 8th.
Can you leave with them then? Okay, bye.
Having run before, Young's face was well known in Atlanta. But he was not the only serious contender. His principal opponent was Weish Fowler. 3 years before, a black candidate had lost to a liberal like Fowler, in part because the black community had split. The presence of a third opponent, black Atlanta Alderman Henry D. Dodson, confronted Young with a similar dilemma. Could he win the primary with two blacks in the contest?
Oh, we're going to have to move a little faster. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you, brother. All righty.
The district's 89,000 black voters were concentrated in the center of Atlanta. Though enfranchised since the abolition of the white primary in 1946, the record of Atlanta's black electorate was one of apathy.
Have you been to vote yet? You going to vote, Dawn? No. Oh, Lord. Okay.
With his wife, Jean, Andrew Young spent the summer months reaching out to convince black voters, often one at a time.
All right, hope you'll vote for my husband, Andrew Young.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, sir.
In the beginning of August, the polls showed him leading, but not by much.
All righty.
And I'm a volunteer working for the Andrew Young for Congress campaign. And I was calling to remind you this day's election day. And if you haven't already...
His organization, still small and untested, struggled to get the black vote out. Time was short. At 7 a.m., he took 10 minutes to vote, and the remaining 11 hours and 50 minutes to get other people to do the same. At 7 p.m., the polls closed. On Piedmont Avenue, a small group of volunteers gathered at Young headquarters. The decision was now out of their hands. Though the precincts reported slowly, by 11 p.m., the result was clear.
So that means, obviously, as Mr. Fowler just told us, he does not have a chance, and that the Democratic nominee who will go on to meet Mr. Cook in November will be the Reverend Andrew Young, who, as you recall...
Thank you very much. I tell you, let's clap for you. Clap for yourself.
Well, Atlanta is a city that's not like any others. It's big and it has some of the same kind of problems that other cities do, but it's really a city unique. But I think the lessons learned from this campaign can be applied in other places. That people can do what Andy Young did. 2 years ago, he ran for Congress and ran a very open and a very flashy and a very media-oriented campaign. This time he ran a door-to-door, hard-work canvassing campaign, and it's paying off this time.
Let me just say that whatever victory we have is your victory. Because it was really the hard work of so many, many people in so many ways, on the telephone, the people who went out every afternoon knocking on doors, those that passed out envelopes, and people that drove cars all over the district today, and just everything that went into making this whatever victory it is. I think it's a great victory.
But in terms of, winning in November, we're going to have to run a well-organized campaign because the Republican opponent will have a lot of money. He'll have professional people down here, and he won't have to worry about getting people to the polls who can't get their own transportation. He won't have to worry about motivating people to vote. They're going to vote.
Hello, how you doing?
Days.
Great, how you doing?
Good to see you, Rodney.
Everything going all right?
Great.
Thank you.
We're pulling for you.
Take your friends with you.
His name was Rodney Cook, and he had held elected office in Atlanta for as long as Andrew Young had lived there.
I've given you 11 effective years as a city alderman and as a state representative from all of Fulton County. Those have been effective years and good years and have given me the background and the experience and the knowledge of you and the people and the concerns and the needs of this district, because I've been walking the streets of this district and I know those problems and I've worked with them for 11 years. It's given me the legislative experience. It'll be vitally important in the Congress of the United States, because that's no place to send somebody for on-the-job training. They're going to be vital issues determined in the next 2 years in Washington, issues that will deeply affect each and every one of you, your lives, your children, their education, the security of this nation, your businesses, the taxes that you pay. Every aspect of your life will be greatly affected by the votes that one of us will cast for you. My opponent has said that he wants to be your errand boy in Congress. He thinks voting is secondary. Well, I don't want to be your errand boy. But I want to go to Washington and vote for you. I want to vote on the things that are important and the issues that will vitally affect this nation in the years to come. Thank you so much. You appreciate it. Hi.
Hey.
Rodney Cook.
I've met you before.
Well,
I'm Mrs. Herb's.
Oh, you sure have. Let me give you another one of these.
Thank you so much.
Like Young, Rodney Cook could count parts of Atlanta as his. In early September, with decided support from Atlanta's northern suburbs, the polls gave Cook a 10-point lead.
Take it easy.
See you all. All right. I sure appreciate your help. Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If Rodney Cook had problems in the 5th District, they weren't ones of apathy, but of distance.
All right, I plan to vote for you.
Great. Please take all your friends with you.
I will.
How about a bumper sticker?
Fine.
How long have you been here?
That. 3 years.
Though his efforts focused on Atlanta's white community, he had always won office before on a broader appeal.
I've never asked anybody to vote for me because I'm white. I've taken some stands back during the early 60s. I stood up, I think, for justice. For one thing, I was on the Board of Aldermen. I introduced a resolution, a public accommodations resolution, calling on all the merchants of this city to open their facilities to all people. And this was before the Civil Rights Bill passed in the Congress. That's just one, and there are many, many others. Well, you're mighty nice. I sure hope you're with me. Fine, thank you. Bye. And I think I'm the only candidate who can represent all the people of this district, and I think over the last 11 years I've proved I can. And I say this because I'll speak out against evil wherever I find it, whether it's in my community, as I have down through the years, or whether it's in somebody else's community, and he hadn't done that.
Cook's moderate racial position made Young's task more difficult. It was generally conceded that Young needed 25% of the white vote to win. And the question became, how far should he go to seeking votes that perhaps could never be his?
A crisis of confidence in the minds of many, many Americans. It seems as though we've been through so many changes and there's so many problems that we are now aware of, that many people are wondering just what's going to happen to us in the city. What's going to happen to this nation? Where do we go from here is a common question that's always asked. But I guess I'm running because I really believe in this nation. I believe in this city especially. And I believe in people. And so I'm hoping to represent you in Congress and represent you as a person willing to accept the challenge of making Atlanta a truly international city, living up to the greatness that's promised to us all, and that all of us hope for this city.
Reapportionment created another problem. In 1972, blacks were made a 43% minority in the 5th District, leaving the balance of power where it had always been. But Atlanta had a unique tradition in race relations, as former Mayor Ivan Allen explains.
Somewhere in the middle 40s, and certainly by the early 50s, there had come a recognition of the fact that what could be considered the business civic community of Atlanta, which was 100% white, that their greatest hope of having a strong candidate in the mayor's office and having a good administration would come from an alliance with the black vote. And as it went down through the years, the black community generally supported the business civic community of the city in the political races, and these two units gathering together were able to overcome the racist attitude in Atlanta.
Their best interests were served by making some sort of political coalition, at least with Black Atlanta. Not in the sense that they were giving black people in the city anything, but that the best economic and political interest of the city and the state were served if race relations here went rather smoothly. And so therefore you had what they used to call the best people of both races, which meant a few white people and a few black people getting together and ultimately deciding for everyone who was going to be the mayor, who was going to be on the city council, tried to suggest who the city would vote for in statewide races and even in presidential contests. And that coalition generally gave Atlanta good government, clean government, honest government, and in a southern context, very, very liberal government.
For 20 years, the coalition had been good business for Atlanta. It brought jobs for both races and prosperity for the business community. 450 of the nation's 500 largest corporations opened offices here. In retail sales, in population, in all the indicators of growth, Atlanta was first in the South in 1972. But the economic boom unexpectedly created another opportunity. "We have a hostage here," said a prominent black leader. "Hundreds of millions of dollars of white investment. They're not going to get up and leave all this."
The future of the city, you've been told, is in your hands. But I want to say to you that the present of this city is very much in your hands. Because what is happening here at this luncheon is something that this whole city has got to learn. I was talking to the president of one of our major corporations not long ago, and he said the real test of this city is whether or not we can have an integrated workforce and work together in this city and still make a profit. Now that's a serious question, because if every little thing that crops up is going to mean a strike or a walkout or somebody getting fired or somebody getting mad, the truth of the matter is nobody's going to make any money. Not the people who are working, nor the people who own the businesses. And so I say to you, it's not the future that depends on your leadership, but maybe right now, the profit or loss of the business that you're related to may depend on the kind of leadership that you can give. Any problem that we have in this city can be solved that way, and you and I are going to have to solve them and go on to really make this the greatest city in the history of the world. Amen.
Would you please come on up here and get your legs limbered up a little bit? Okay.
Though some said it wasn't in his interest, Rodney Cook agreed to debate Andrew Young before Atlanta's white leadership.
I would like for both of the candidates to tell us what they propose to do to stop inflation.
I think very definitely one of the biggest problems we have in the inflation problem is deficit federal financing. And I'm opposed to it, and as I said in my opening remarks, I'll support a ceiling on federal spending of $250 billion. I'm sorry it didn't pass in this last Congress.
It's a difference between a helicopter which may be blown up
and a rapid transit system which continues to generate more income. I think part of the problem of inflation is the conversion to a peacetime economy.
Unlike my opponent, my major support does not come from labor, and unlike my opponent, my major obligations are not to labor unions, and therefore, unlike him, I do favor right-to-work legislation, and I think it's just period, I favor it.
No, wait a minute. I said I am against right-to-work laws, because I think right-to-work laws basically are not democratic.
And to come backwards on your question, I'm opposed to the legalization of marijuana. They haven't proved to me yet that it is not harmful, and so I am very definitely opposed to the legalization of it.
I'm really afraid of legalization of marijuana because I don't think that that is moving our society in the direction that we ought to be moving into. And I would just oppose any further narcotization of our society.
That I think that the hullabaloo over this thing that has been blown up with charges of espionage and what have you are the activities of a candidate and a party who are hurting on issues, on the basic issues of national defense and all the other things. Now, at the same time, I think that it has been admitted by the Democratic Party that there is a spy in Republican headquarters. And I think that I don't see much difference between a spy and a bug myself.
I guess I got used to bugging under Democrats because the Democrats bugged the civil rights movement. And that was bad and wrong. I think it was equally wrong for the Republicans to bug the Democrats and back and forth. I think we've got to have some respect for privacy and some respect for the political process. And I think that's the basic question. The use of the federal machinery to further the activities of any political party, and I would oppose that.
I think you've got a big decision to make, and that is on the issues that will be before the next Congress, on the issues that will vitally affect each and every one of you. Who do you want voting for you, Andrew Young or me? I hope when you make that decision that you'll look at the both of us, and I hope you'll look at our experience. And I hope you'll look at our obligations and our support. My support comes from you and the other people in this district. My opponent's support comes from labor unions and from sources outside this state.
Yeah, well, I mean, that says to me that he's running scared and that he's trying to stir up a negative vote. I mean, it's not a vote for him that he's trying to get, it's a vote against me. I really want to win in such a way that it represents a mandate from the poor community and the business community and the black community and the white community. And it's important to me that that coalition victory be attained.
My strength's pretty general. Always has been. Pretty much across the district, white and black areas. Of course, I'll be hurting in the black areas in this election, but I think that strength is still there. I don't think he can generate a big turnout against me, is what I'm saying. I may not get I won't likely get a large percentage of the vote, but I don't think he can generate a big turnout against me. Well, for example, I was in this restaurant the other day, and a couple of the waitresses who were working had Young stickers on, and a friend of mine owns the place, and I've been there a lot and know all these folks, and so I said something to him. He said, look, don't worry. He said, she's wearing a Young button, but she's voting for you, and it's just because of the pressures in the black community that she feels she's just got to, but she said she's voting for you.
We believe that any young man can make a lot of strong commitments in Congress for us.
But Young saw it differently. His task was to get a traditionally uninvolved black community to vote, and vote big.
And Andy is that guy who can do it. And that's all we want, to get this guy over the hurdle to win.
For Young, the key was volunteers. In the beginning, they were more white than black. Being less dependent on after-school jobs, white students had more time and were less hesitant to get involved.
Yeah, the bogus material, like I said, was...
But with the victory in the primary, the black leadership began to assert itself at all levels of the campaign. Until for a moment in early September, the coalition Andrew Young sought in the election at large seemed in jeopardy in his own headquarters.
I need what?
You need where you're going, right?
Yeah, but she's going to take my people. How can I go without anybody? She's not.
Yes, she is.
When I came into the campaign 2 months ago, we had a problem with all the white people being in charge and black folks being on the bottom with a black candidate.
There has been racial tension at times. It surfaces, it seems to be dealt with, and then it goes away or it submerges.
The white people in charge were really conscientious and all of that for Andy. But we were finding that the subordinates, the very bottom of the campaign, you know, the street people and the people who were doing the detail work were all black. And that was kind of disturbing to the black people, to the black campaigners. And, you know, several times they revolted, and they were going to quit. They were going to do a lot of other things, you know, not only quit, they were going to take care of business, so to speak.
The other day, some of our black staff and volunteers were loading some stuff on a truck. And they had, well, I thought the way it was put on the truck was not the best way in case the truck had to make a quick stop. And I said, why don't you stack it this way? And one guy turned to me and said, why is it that white people think they always have to supervise black people? We joke about it. And I think with maybe one or two exceptions, there has never been any real serious hostility that has affected the ability of the staff to get the job done.
If there had been time, the issue might have remained. But there was no time. It was quickly perceived if Young was to win, he needed the support of both groups.
Talk to your folks, will you? I'm Rodney Cook. How you doing?
Always in the past, he had been elected with black support, sometimes with as much as 80% of the black vote.
How you doing? Can I give you one? I'm Rodney Cook. I sure hope you vote for me. You a voter?
A proven liberal in race relations, he returned to ask for their help again.
I've been here before. I've been here for 11 years. And so I've know many of these people. They recognize me. I recognize many of them. I think I have friends here throughout this community.
Well, I don't think we can afford, just from a numerical standpoint, to let race be the primary factor in our choices to support candidates, as whites have done time and time again, because we can't play the numbers game. They can control most of the state houses in the South, and they can just gerrymander us, reapportion us right out of business again. Whenever we find a guy that we can support, like Rodney, who has stood up time and time again throughout the years for the best interests of everybody in this district, regardless of race, and we feel that he is the best candidate in terms of representing the entire district. And blacks can't fool themselves into thinking that we can do any better than the district as a whole. And this is primarily our reasons for supporting Rodney, despite the fact that we have a strong black candidate running.
Well, if you were elected by these people of this district, could you find them jobs?
I think I can sure help.
So you can help, but could you find them jobs?
Well, I ain't gonna say I can go out myself.
Well, we can say the same thing now.
Let's say it now.
That's the same thing as electing me. Help thyself. You know, why should we help you and you can't promise us anything? You know,
I can promise you good representation in the Congress. I can promise you.
I can promise that myself. I can go up and stand up for right and wrong. You can stand up for right and wrong, but what good will that do you by standing up? You know.
You know my record. You ever heard of the Peyton barricade?
Yeah. I know what the people in this district are
What do
now.
you think about it?
Yes.
What do you think about it?
Now, that was one of the most stupidest things that a whitey could do.
All right, and you know who fought it?
Yeah.
Who?
Not you.
I did too. I did, and Richard Freeman did, and we were the only two aldermen
in the background. Hey, listen,
you weren't around, pal.
What we want, my name is not Pal. Lewis is my name.
Louis?
Yeah, I'm not a pal of yours.
Nice to see
Lewis
you.
is my name.
Okay.
Yeah, Hurst. Yeah.
All right.
Now.
All right, I fought it, and Richard Freeman fought it, and we were the only two aldermen who did.
You gotta be kidding. You gotta be kidding.
You look at the record.
Show me the record.
show me the record now, I'll say, yes, sir.
I believe that if this country is going to survive, there's going to have to emerge a new politics, a politics that feeds the hungry, a politics that brings about peace in the world. Because how are we as a nation going to relate to a world that's 2/3 colored so long as we are run by people who think of colored people as niggers? It wasn't just an antagonism to communism that led us into war. It was an antagonism to communists of color. Now, that's what I'm saying about our relationships to the rest of the world. And so I see my going to Congress, not just as me going to Congress, but as a way of saying to you, you know, that if Andy Young can go to Congress, I can go to Congress.
Don't knock me for that. I said when I was chairman,
Did you try to stop the Omni from being put up there?
I changed that program so people could stay in their houses. That's what I did. Now, don't be knocking me for the Omni. Folks made a mistake the last time I ran for office, and you got the mayor you got today. If you like him,
what can you
okay,
tell
that's
people
up
about
to
the wrong
you.
things that's going on
What
as
is the
far
wrong
as urban
thing?
renewal, job, and
I
education?
did it, and I changed it when I was
I heard a
there.
man say something about busing. You know, who wants to be bused? People want jobs.
All right, I'm opposed to busing. My opponent says that he'll vote against legislation to stop it. So if you want to be bused, you vote for him. If you don't want to be bused, you vote for me. The one who did. Wait a minute now.
The Omni was built where it's supposed to be an urban renewal, right?
What?
Bingo.
Let me ask you something.
Bingo.
I think we're at a real crossroads here, and I've said often that I think the future of Atlanta and probably the future of other cities as well depends on what the black community and the black leadership does. I think it's wrong to have a solid vote. It's based strictly on race, whether it's white or black. It hurt, say, people of my persuasion who had been pretty much, I think, moderate and had made efforts during that decade to see both sides and to work for progress for all people. I think that pendulum just started to swing, and I think it developed as to what it is today, and that is that the black community is voting pretty solidly black for black.
Rodney should know that when he did come in the black community in the past, he was the liberal. He was the good guy. When he came this time, he was the bad guy. And it wasn't so much because he had changed as that the circumstances around him had changed. Whereas before being a, I guess, Rockefeller Republican in the Georgia legislature is tantamount to being a socialist in the New York General Assembly, he was the good guy, the guy on the left. But when he became Andrew Young's opponent, or even Sam Massell's opponent in 1969, he was the bad guy running against the good guy. And it was not altogether a question of black versus white, although that certainly had importance. But it wasn't altogether that. It was the good guy versus the bad guy, and he had, because of the change of circumstances, the new political consciousness among black voters, he became the bad guy.
But we try not to deal with the racial overtone so much as the real problem. I mean, for instance, let's say a matter of scheduling, whether I should go to a North Side shopping center and campaign with the white community, basically, or go to a West Side shopping center where there are black voters involved. And both groups of organizers might feel as though I ought to be in their area. Now, there's a racial undercurrent there. But basically, the decision is, where can I get the most votes?
Campaigning in the black community often involves some unusual rituals, but then ethnic politics in America always has. In Atlanta's black neighborhoods after dusk, many people who wouldn't open their doors for a stranger came outside for something else.
Andrew Young, keep on coming with the young sound of the soulful brass. Come on out for Andrew Young. November the 7th, punch the number 49. That's the number you want to punch when you go out for Andrew Young. Get down, soulful brass. You heard it. Now soulful brass, keep on coming with the young sound of Andrew Young. Get down.
Having decided to run a door-to-door campaign, he came to Atlanta's West Side Y to find volunteers. Unlike their parents, Atlanta's young black generation had not yet found American politics a dead end.
Let me thank you all for coming out. You know, we talk about the future being in the hands of young people. But I want to say that the present is in your hands. That if anything that has happened in our lifetime, students and young people have done it. Is that right? It was students who gave us the desegregation of the lunch counter. It was students that gave us the right to vote. And now I'm hoping that you will help to get out a big community vote so that you can send me to Congress. And I will just happen to be the first black man to go to the Congress of the United States of Georgia. I'd like to present to you a young lady who has worked in the civil rights movement for a long, long time. Whose husband gave us the civil rights movement in its modern form, and who's a resident of this community and who wanted to come out tonight just to say a few words to you. I'd like for you to welcome Mrs. Martin Luther King Jr.
Because a lot of people worked hard, some people even died, that we might have this precious right. And who are you going to vote for? That's right, you're going to vote for Andrew Young, because he is the best man to represent us.
Well, now I think I better turn it back over. Let me see, while you all are learning some politics, maybe I can get me some good lessons over here on the side. If I could, I'd like to be a very big movie star. Oh, well, this is
This is really the last day. Tomorrow morning, I would like for everybody to be at their station or be here at 5:45, because by 6:15, the pace will be so fast. If you don't get here and get yourselves together and know exactly what you're going to do, we will have problems throughout the day. Okay, Don.
And I think it's been just in the last several weeks that the campaign really has taken off, and that the polls have indicated that our support is changing, and we've been coming up ever since. And this, of course, was our thought and plan to. We wanted to peak at 7 a.m. in the morning.
The loss would mean that the coalition of black and white voters, which has elected the mayors and the aldermen and everybody else, when it's the black majority going with a white minority of goodwill to elect good white candidates, it works. But it would mean that the coalition doesn't work when it comes time to elect a good black candidate. And I think that would probably very seriously disillusion the black voters and leadership.
And one thing that we want to do tonight, after we leave the meeting, is to go back and run a blitz around every polling place, stick up Andy Young stickers and signs.
In the late afternoon of that final day, according to most polls, Andrew Young was behind. He could win only if they succeeded in turning out black voters in numbers unprecedented in Atlanta politics. Tomorrow would bring the test, and perhaps something they had not planned on.
In the event it does rain.
No, it's not going to rain. I tell you, you don't worry about the weather. Me and the Lord will take care of the weather. And if it rains, he'll know why it's going to rain.
At 6 a.m. on November 6th, the first volunteers began to gather at Young headquarters.
48 ones, too, right? That's what it's
In the week before, 2,000 people had called for rides to the polls. And now, the first of over 500 drivers received their assignments.
Give this back to Todd, and we'll do that. We'll do that. This is Miss Dumas. I'm calling from Andrew Young headquarters.
At the telephone banks, volunteers using computerized lists based on months of canvassing reached out to the 61 black precincts on which the election would turn.
Yes, ma'am. You voted for him already? Okay, we're back to the room. Okay, great. We'll be in. Well, very good. Do you have a way to the polls?
Okay, need someone at 400 Amo Drive.
With the rain, a ride to the polls became even more important, and hundreds of new pickups were added each hour. By 10 a.m., almost 1,000 voters had been driven to the polls.
This is the Republican headquarters. We're calling to find out if you have already voted today. Okay.
At Cook headquarters in suburban Sandy Springs, another group of volunteers gathered to complete a similar strategy.
There's no hanky-panky in there.
Erskine. This is Mrs. Mr. Collins from the Republican
Hello,
headquarters.
Mrs. Hodge. This is
I'd like to know
Collins,
if we've been out
Republican
voting.
headquarters.
The rain posed a problem here, too. Perhaps the only difference was that most of Cook's supporters had their own cars to get to the polls.
Woo, Lord.
I came over here to ask for something.
Well, I can't tell with the weather. I don't know. I think it could be bad for both of them. I really do. I can't remember, quite frankly, it being in a day like this in an election before, so I don't know. It could affect the whites because they have to stand in line so long, and a lot of them are standing out in the pouring down rain. I voted at 7:15 this morning and had to wait a half an hour. Sandy Springs at North Springs High School had a 2-hour wait. 8U at Christ the King Gym is now up to 3.5 hours. And some people get tired of waiting.
The first report that we have that the returns are very, very high. The lines are very long and they're 3 deep. That isn't good for Andy at all in the white community. If this was so in the black community, I would feel very good about it. It makes me very, very nervous.
It's keeping votes down, but they're not his votes. Keeping the votes of the inner city worker who lives out in the more affluent suburbs, who probably is anti-Andy Young. But I think in that regard, the rain has been good for him, because he only needs to get about 20% of the white vote, and there are at least 20% of white people are decent-minded and clean-hearted and fair-minded. I think they'd do the right thing.
It's going to be very close.
Very close?
Yeah.
I need your vote. Brother, I need you to vote for me as your congressman. I need your vote, okay? I need your vote. Every pretty lady in this town is supposed to have on one, okay? Thank you.
At Young headquarters, with the help of computers, the poll watchers' voting lists were checked to identify low turnout precincts. Cars and canvassers were diverted to the areas where they were needed most.
Okay, could you go down there? And he's going to West Hunter. Were there any canvassers?
Yeah, okay, fine.
Knowing he could not reach his supporters by walking the streets, as the voting progressed, Rodney Cook waited.
Great. What'd you say?
She's
all
fine, yeah.
Great. Get her charged up. That looks great.
No, this is just to see. This
By 6 p.m., the first strong indications of Nixon's landslide came in, and it looked like Georgia might go Republican for the second time in half a century.
Yeah, we need your vote, that's all. Yeah, just,
Anyone else? Anyone else?
On the streets of Atlanta, the Ride to the Polls operation got some help. 6 chartered city buses picked up 700 people at bus stops downtown and drove them to vote. With an hour left before the polls closed, Andrew Young went out on the street again to find votes, one at a time. At 7 p.m., the polls were closed. At Young headquarters, some of the over 1,000 volunteers drifted in to await the results. After 7 months of campaigning, there was no time left.
I think we did everything we could have done. I think we worked hard, and everything worked good today. It did.
Excellent.
It worked
Excellent.
beautifully.
The best Greens campaign I've ever been in.
Right. Gorgeous.
You know, there was no argument today. Nobody jumped on anybody. There was no tempers flying.
Right.
We worked really systematic today. And I think this came from the primary, would you say?
9 p.m. As the first Republicans gathered in the Castle Ballroom of the Royal Coach Inn, the early news reports were encouraging.
Scattered rain came to Georgia as forecast today, but they apparently have very little to do with the turnout in the general election. Political observers all are surprised at the large number of voters who braved the bad weather and went to the polls.
The large turnout bode well for their candidates, but fewer than expected had shown up to celebrate. There was a quietness in the room that did not reflect the pollsters' predictions. By 10:30, although the networks had announced one of the greatest Republican landslides in history, something quite different had happened in Georgia's 5th congressional district. Andrew Young had won by 7,000 votes, almost exactly the number his volunteers had driven to the polls. 28% of the white vote had combined with Atlanta's black community to make him the winner. At 11 p.m., he shared the victory with those who had made it possible.
I understand that the United Press has declared me the winner. But you know, I just don't know what to say. I look around. No, it's almost not preaching time. First place, I preached out my voice, asking people to vote for me. Now, Walt Elder wants to know what this victory means to Atlanta. I think one of the things that it means is that we are going to continue to grow together and work together as a city. It means that this district is not going to live by its fears and its anxieties, but it's going to live by its hopes and its aspirations, and that it doesn't make any difference what color the leadership is. The important thing is people who are willing to work and people who have decent ideas and can rally support for those ideas.
We all know that election of black people was an inevitable conclusion in Atlanta. It was a question of when it came and whether it was gracefully accepted and gratefully received by the black people after they got it, and gracefully accepted by the white people after it came about. Andrew Young was able to do this. I think that he has left a reservoir of goodwill to build on. I really think that my generation will live to see the day when race as a term in political world is pretty well eliminated. I don't think we're so far away from it right now.
Well, I would hope that the significance of my victory is that we've put another nail in the coffin of racism, and that we've helped this country to take another concrete step toward a society where black and white, rich and poor, young and old, can live together and respect and understand and love one another.
Thank you.